we test for you. Not just software, but actual people and process. And so we test the backups daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. So from every single day at very nuanced levels, all the way to quarterly, full offsite disaster recovery testing. And I've never met a service provider that could test anywhere like that. They all go, I wish I could, because they want to sleep at night.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Damien Stevens, founder and CEO of Servosity. Damien, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I appreciate you spending some time with us on Business Ninjas. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and about Servosity.
Sure. I'm the founder and CEO of Servosity. And in a nutshell, what we do is we serve these tech companies called managed service providers. And those are things most businesses haven't heard of, but they're in every city. They're the unsung heroes keeping the lights on. They're the IT providers your business calls. If you're not a Fortune 500 company that has a full-time IT staff, you're likely using one of these managed service providers. And we're the unsung hero behind them that keeps everything backed up and protected and going in case things don't go to plan.
Gotcha. And what's your background? How did you come to be founder and CEO of Servosity?
I didn't know any better. That's really, I think if somebody sat me down and told me how hard it'd be and how much sacrifice it would take, I may not have. It's one of a few startups, and I started it because I was an MSP, and we were growing and hiring people, and newer in the business, less mature in it. And we just, threw people at problems. So we lacked that process to really onboard and have a shared vision and set clear outcomes for what success looks like. And so it was the wild, wild west as we grew faster and faster. But my story is if you hire an MSP, every business that you expect them to take care of, one of the things is kind of backup and disaster recovery. Make sure if your server or your laptop or whatever dies, gets ransomware, whatever the scenario, that they can put it back. And so everybody does it. We did it. I used one of the, major brands, and every time something didn't work, I went and fixed it. And the crazy part is I thought that was enough. And one day I learned the hard way when my best client called and said, we're down. We have all these servers down. Come fix this. And it's not a fun day when that happens for the IT provider. It's a long night, is what I was thinking. But what I thought would become a long night became way worse, because we went to recover and we had backups, but the backups were basically corrupted. And I ended up being on tech support with the vendor. And long story short, basically we had never tested them, so we didn't know. And according to the vendor, we had been backing up corrupted data. And so we, according to the vendor, had successfully restored corrupted data. So you can imagine if I said, here you go, Andrew, here's your data. I mean, it won't open. You can't read it. It doesn't do anything, but here's some big pile of ones and zeros. That's pretty useless. So that's really probably the worst part of my career, was to go in front of my client that trusted me and stand in front of them and say, the thing you hired me to do, the thing you trusted me with, I cannot do. And I was heartbroken. Yeah, I was just, I just couldn't imagine, and I was like, what am I going to do in business? And that had all sort of knock-on effects, right? Basically that business teetered in and out of, like, on the line of bankruptcy, that business that we couldn't recover. The business that we were running, all of a sudden the staff and everybody else, they were like, wait, hold on. What about our other clients? What's going to happen next time? And that So it was just kind of a dark time for me. And I was in IT, and even though I was passionate about helping people, really, even though I had a technology background, it was always about helping people. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, maybe I should do something less stressful, like jump out of an airplane or something.
Hey,
So
there's nothing more educational than failure, right? If you're paying attention. So
yeah, it is. It is a rough way to learn, and sometimes a necessary way to learn. Yeah. So that's what brought me to it. And what happened is I talked to other MSPs, and that's one thing I would definitely encourage others to do is talk to others. When you have a tough time, when you're going through failure, first of all, don't stop, keep going. And second of all, talk to others, talk to your peers, because they've got it as bad as you do. And in a lot of ways, and they can be encouraging about how they've been through it. And what I realized is the vast majority had been through what I had been through. So I wasn't the dumbest, in the first to have done something like that.
and when did that take place? When did Servosity come to be?
Servosity came to be as a basically kind of developing it in '05 and as a company in 2007. So that makes us as a tech company quite old now. I think it makes
Yeah.
us the company old enough to vote or something like that.
Oh, in this day and age of turnover and acquisition, that's 16 years is nothing to shake a stick at.
Yeah.
So tell me about turning that corner from being an MSP to Servosity and to understanding the needs and the parameters of what you have to do to guarantee people's data.
Sure. So, the headlines sound better than the reality, right? The headlines are like, I was an MSP and I went and started this company to serve MSPs. And that did give me an advantage because I knew my customer. I knew not only what they needed in terms of backup and disaster recovery, what we do, but I knew all their other common, hiring's a real pain, sales, I'm really lacking structure and process. I knew the other struggles. And so that allowed me to relate to my customers more than somebody that didn't have that background. But that's just the headline. That was great. The reality of it is I had this other business and partners, and we didn't see eye to eye because I was unwilling to continue to do the same thing we had done that led us there. And they didn't want to go through all the time, money, and effort to basically train our people, create process, do all of these things, because it would have slowed the business growth at the time. It was one of those technology booms. It's just the wild, wild west. You throw people at it. And you know how it can be so hard to grow. When you are growing, you just do whatever you can to keep that flywheel spinning. And so the behind the scenes of it is, I decided to basically walk away from it. And that wasn't in that moment the best financial decision, and go start a new company. And for anybody that started a new company, at least when I start them, they don't start out making money. They start out consuming cash. So yeah, that was the again, talking to MSPs, I realized there's a better way. I actually thought, there's got to be a better company out there doing it. Even I used one of the brand names, maybe I should just, buy this brand or that brand and it'll work. And I tried when I say every piece of software, I tried some software, not even in English, just to see if something worked, and nothing helped you with the process or the people side, nothing tested. And so there's this huge market gap. And so between understanding the customer and the gap in the market, that's what led me to create Servosity.
Well, hey, I mean, you were in a situation where you were continuing to grow and scale a company that had a long-term problem, right? You've experienced a setback, and it's going to happen again unless you change the process. So, investing in the long range as opposed to profiting right now makes a lot of sense. And here we are talking about a company that's had legs. So, what are the most common problems you're solving for your clients?
It really boils down. So, you could look at us and say, hey, at the end of the day, they're buying, we're software as a service, and they're buying our software and providing it to you, the end business client. And you probably don't even know it's there. It's behind the scenes. It's part of what their service offering is. So it is software as a service. So you would think the answer might be technology, and that is certainly part of it. It's a lever.
Mhm.
But what I learned is people are in this business And the tech companies, these managed service providers, technology, if you guys haven't noticed, it hasn't slowed. The pace of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you understand directly, Andrew. Just look at what AI has done to your world, right? And just all these things, like, no, it seems like more and more, gimme. It just gets harder and harder. It seems like every month or year to keep up with that. And certainly when the problem is the average business, looks to these tech companies and thinks, well, they're a tech company. They probably have a handle on everything, which is just not really possible. So no matter what they do, they might hire a specialist or two, but they invariably become jack of all trades.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that they're bad. What I mean is, they know enough to keep the systems running, and they know enough cybersecurity to be a lot better than you are. And they know enough about backup to put the basics on it. They know enough about compliance to advise you how that relates to your tech. They know, they have to know how this impacts your insurance provider that says you need to have MFA and this and that. So that they have to know so many things. I don't envy them, because it's only gotten harder since I used to be one of those. And so because they're stretched to kind of be, tell me about everything. And then now when AI and everything else came out, of course, a lot of their clients called and said, what should I do? What should I do for my business? What does that mean? And of course, as fast as AI wave is plowing through everything, it's nobody who's an expert in that. So, so part of it is there's a gigantic people problem,
Mhm.
and they just can't find enough people to hire usually as they're growing. And so, first of all, you don't usually have enough people, and secondly, you usually lack process. Now, as you scale, you might put in entrepreneurial systems like EOS or others to kind of build your structure in your company and process, and that helps from a business level, but they lack the process to have repeatable, deployable, and testable backup and disaster recovery. And when you don't have the people and or the process, either, one of two things happen. Either you just don't really do it well, which is going to put you in the same spot I was in, or you would have to charge a fortune because you lack the process. Like, you'd have to throw labor at it. And the reality of it is, it's a competitive market. You're not going to pay 4 times as much for what you view the same service as the other guy. And what you don't realize is the other guy might have been cutting corners, and so anyway, long story short, it boils down to people, and it boils down to process. There's technology in there, but they're always lacking one or the other. So the struggles that they have is basically either I'm growing and I'm fortunate and blessed to be growing, but I can't get enough. And the more senior people I need them in more places. They need to go deeper on cybersecurity. They need to go deeper on AI. They need to go deeper on whatever the next thing is that the client needs. And often the more senior folks get involved in the testing of a disaster recovery plan, because it's not that easy. It's pretty complex. It's very nuanced. And it sucks up all their time. So one of the answers is we're unique in that we actually provide this as a service for them. So that removes the labor component for them and allows them to focus on what actually differentiates their business, because they have to have it. They've got to protect you. That's non-negotiable, but they don't have to do all of that with their labor. And then secondly, even if they felt like they had the labor, they just don't have the process to really find all the issues. It's a complex, nuanced issue that I've spent, about 20 years finding all the ways to not do it. So much so we even have produced a piece of content that's a download that is, this is basically what we do, but it's not written as like a sales material. It's written as, here's what I recommend you do as a former SP in 20 years making mistakes. You don't have to buy our product to do it. Here's how you should test. Here's how you should implement this. So great. If you want to do that, go protect yourself. And if you look at the enormity of it and you go, this seems like more than we could execute on, then you can hire us to do it. Either way is a win, because now I'm helping somebody not end up in the spot I ended up in, which is staring your customer in the face saying, I don't have it. I'll let you down.
Hey, you're providing value up front, which is the way we have to start all relationships these days. And hey, in a perfect world, the service you provide is peace of mind and people being able to sleep at night and attend to their job, right? Because what you do has to function properly when push comes to shove. Tell me about, I assume as we all continue to work remotely, right? That means there's more access points, more different systems involved. Does that become more of a challenge when push does come to shove and you have to and you have to reinstall data and systems and things when there are so many people so scattered and so many legacy systems? Tell me about the challenges through COVID.
Yeah, I mean, these managed service providers, they went from maybe working overtime some to just working around the clock because the average business went to an office and they couldn't. And so they had to be enabled in one way or another to do business remotely, whether it was moving to, Zoom or Microsoft 365, or whether it was a VPN, or there's just specific things they needed. So there was a period for months where it was like, nobody sleep. We got to take care of our customers. And we saw it because we helped them, and there was a lot of growth for them and for us, but it was unsustainable. Like they just, they were like, I've got a team that hasn't taken a day off in 6 months, and we're averaging like 16 hours a day. And but the way I would describe the average managed service provider is they're more like the plumber or the electrician, kind of the blue collar worker of the IT industry. And I mean that in a great way. What I mean by that is, you don't appreciate your plumber till something doesn't work, or your electrician or something like that. And so they're usually very, service and duty oriented. So they really went to bat for, America really when everybody needed it. And so, maybe some had flat rate agreements where they didn't see any much profit. Others, profited more off of that. But generally they just saw it as their kind of duty, because everybody's reality changed overnight. So it was like, well, if Andrew's business used to be in an office and now it's remote, like Andrew can't do business until you do this for him. So, those guys were working around the clock. And it kind of erased the notion of, everybody works in an office. There's always a server in the office that we save everything to, and everything's nice and neat and simple. And it made it more dynamic, in terms of not only do you work from home, but what other people found out during that time is you didn't always use your work issued computer. You might have just signed into your applications on your home computer because it was faster. And that presented other technology challenges. The other thing is, in the old world, it was kind of the castle with the moat. Let's protect it and fortify this one place that everybody comes. And but now every computer's on your own home network, and my kids over there gaming, and they get some virus and it spreads across the home network, and so that ends up back into the company. And so it's just the reality of things are more complex. They're not going back. Some people obviously go back to the office or adopt a hybrid scenario, but very few are going back to nobody's remote ever. And same thing whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever you use. It was a less common thing. Right now, it's the norm. So that means that the way that business operates, the technology has to support it. And that also means it was an amazing time for the bad guys, because there were more holes than ever and more areas to defend. So cybersecurity is, in my opinion, still playing catch up. And you buy cybersecurity software from your IT provider to prevent the bad guys from encrypting your computer and demanding a ransom, for example.
Yep.
But we're on the other side of that coin. Like you're not likely to pay the ransom if you can just restore your backup. So the need for what we do and kind of the other side of cybersecurity is just, continued to boom and doesn't seem to slow down, just like the rest of technology.
Well, there's no end in sight. I mean, as people want to be able to wave their phone at any terminal to do any transaction of any sort, the more access that you have to those tools and technologies, the more access people have to you and your data. I mean, you just can't have it both ways. So no,
That's right.
it's cat and mouse. I'm glad to see that there are certified ethical hackers in this world, because there
Mhm.
have to be, right? If only the people with nefarious intent know how to hack, we're all going to come to a crashing halt. So no, you guys
That's right.
perform an invaluable service, no question about that. What verticals are you serving with this platform? Who are your clients?
So managed service providers in the US and Canada. And really, the short answer is that the typical MSP exists in one metro area and they serve that metro area. So whatever city, geo you're in, they serve generally one. A few exceptions, larger ones serve multiple markets, but the average one serves that. And because of that, their business model is they protect the dentist and the attorney and the restaurant and the creative shop and whatever exists. So depending on your location, you're going to have all of those, but your city might be more of a healthcare city, or your city might be more of a tech forward city. And so most of them are geo specific and not vertical. We do have the ones, and the ones that I would say are growing more are specific to the industry. And so you can name an industry just about, and there's at least one or a few that are, and that usually helps them because they do a better job because they understand the needs better, which leads to referrals. And the other side of it is we get asked not just for backup and disaster recovery input and planning and advice, but we get asked like, well, this is a retailer, they're PCI compliant. Okay, well, this is a healthcare, it's HIPAA. Like, what do I do? And well, the good news is we get asked enough about that to at least kind of help bridge that gap on the backup and disaster recovery side. But if you just randomly do healthcare and it's the exception, not the rule, then you may not really understand all the issues that you're going to face when you're trying to make somebody fit into HIPAA or what if, fill in the industry and the regulations. So the folks that are more industry focused are generally growing faster, and they're a better fit because it's not that we can't answer questions, but they usually come and they understand. In order to achieve this, I need this. And that's not only, it's not just makes our job easier, it starts with educating the customer, because if the other thing is because every once in a while, an IT employee will get disillusioned with where they're working. They'll go off and splinter off and create their own company. They'll say, I can do this and I'll start it. So that happens occasionally. But if it's not well thought out, they're not really prepared for starting a business and all the other things that come with it. And if you really don't know what do you need to do with, for example, HIPAA and healthcare, then you're going to tell the client, here's your price. And then, maybe when you talk to us or somebody else and we give you a little more advice on what's actually required, you realize, you can't deliver. You've sold them a bag of goods that's just not going to uphold. So the folks that understand an industry vertical, they know enough to say, you must retain data for longer periods because you're in the real estate industry, for example. They've got to keep all your closings for your house for a longer time period than the restaurant has to, or something like that.
Sure. Hey, if a client understands their needs, the entire conversation is accelerated, right?
Yeah.
And what differentiates Servosity? What makes you guys stand out from your competition?
There's really two things. The first is we are the only one that manages the backup for the IT provider. And it may sound like an odd thing because we serve managed service providers. It's in their name to manage technology. So they're generally used to being very smart, very adept at adopting new technologies and saying, we'll manage this from Microsoft and we'll manage this from this vendor and that vendor and, whatever their vendors are. And they have, over 30 vendors on average. So they're pretty adept at putting together kind of your needs because your needs require all these different vendors. But you can't be an expert in all things. Cybersecurity, backup, Microsoft this, Mac this, whatever it is you might need and their clients might need. There's just so many different areas. So they are not able to keep up with managing backups, testing backups, that sort of thing. So managing it for them is one of the big differentiators. So they can basically focus on what differentiates them. And all things being equal, the faster they're growing, the more that problem hurts, because you're trying to hire more people, and that the odds of somebody missing the thing about what we do in the backup and DR is whenever it works, you don't care. But when you need it, it has to work. And the backups will have issues. Your server will have an issue, and you need to address it. The problem is if you don't address it quickly, and let's say there was an issue with the backups, but the managed service provider's been busy because, for example, when COVID hit, they were working so much. A lot of them admitted to me confidentially, I haven't checked backups in 3 weeks. That means if your backups are failing, I've got nothing current. Everything you've done in the past 3 weeks, I've got none of it. And so that happens even outside of COVID, because they're relatively small companies and they land a gigantic client, or you just are an existing client and you double overnight and they get pulled into new projects. So it's one of those things. It's got to be done every single day and in a very specific way. And it's super hard to staff for that. So solving that is the first. The second leads back to my story, which is we test for you, not just software, but actual people and process. And so we test the backups daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. So from every single day at very nuanced levels, all the way to quarterly, full offsite disaster recovery testing. And I've never met a service provider that could test anywhere like that. They all go, I wish I could, because they want to sleep at night. So that really rolls back into like the average tech or owner at this managed service provider. They're good people. They want the things to work for their client. But they kind of go, man, I can't get, here's this other gap in the market. The average business owner doesn't understand there's so many different ways a backup could say it's successful, and the software will say it is, and it won't restore for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
And the average MSP knows some of those reasons, but the problem is they can't get you to pay 4 times as much to have them do all that testing and all that process. So since there's a gap in the business owner's knowledge, and then there's a gap in their process to execute that cost effectively. So they're sitting there going, I know we don't test. I sure hope we don't need to restore the data for Andrew's business today, because it might restore, and it might is not a good feeling. So that peace of mind for the MSP, the tech, the owner, and ultimately for you at the end of the day, for the actual business in client is it's basically why we exist. It's to make you safe. Sure, there's technology that makes some of that a little bit easier, and I'm sure that will continue to be the case. But there's no, just like there's tons of different AIs that can do writing for me. A lot of it, it's not going to replace humans anytime soon, unattended, untrusted. So that the people and the process, that's why we manage it and we test it. And those are the 2 core differentiators.
Well, I mean, it's a conundrum in your space, which is that the average person doesn't understand the value or want to pay for your service until they need it when it is too late, right?
That's right.
Anybody who's ever lost a hard drive, a computer, a backup understands very clearly what we're talking about. But there's a lot of people who have luckily, and I don't mean to tempt Mr. Murphy, but been unscathed. And until it happens, you do not really understand the value. But allowing people to sleep at night so that they know that no matter what, everything could be restored, especially when so many people are remote and there's so many legacy systems. And leveling the playing field is not the easiest thing to do in 2023 for most businesses.
No, that's the reason we talk about, but like our team, we just it's kind of like we are trying to level the playing field, the bad guys versus the good guys. Cause we got your business doing something good. We've got this IT provider that might be supporting your business that's also doing something good. And then you have these these bad guys, and it's not a fair fight because, the easiest targets are small business. And even if the tech provider and you are doing adequate or above adequate, it's, it's amazing the resources that these guys provide. And one of the reasons is it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, just ransomware.
Yep.
So until that slows down or abates, there's no reason they're going to, so my point is that the bad guys continue to make substantial investments, and the average small business that I talk to doesn't realize. They think, well, I'm not a big target. I'm not a Fortune 500. I'm not. And the reality of it is your business operating is worth something. You're going to pay the ransom if it's worth anything. They're going to, perhaps contact your customers if you don't pay their ransom. They're going to publish it. They're just going to do all of these things. And it's not, generally speaking, much of a fair fight, because it's not that they're having to say, let me target your business individually and spend hundreds of hours to get this kind of small business. No, it's now all automated. One little aside on that is there's now automated search and destroy of backup systems. So now they're starting to go down the line and getting the top vendor and the second and the third biggest backup vendors in the world and saying, the only thing keeping us from getting paid when we ransom you successfully is the backup. So we're going to get good at automatically infecting you and doing the ransom. But now there's been multiple basically automated search and destroy bots of backups, and they understand, how the backups work, because they've built it for this system, and then they go build it for the next one. And then lastly, if you're an evil guy and you have a lot less morals, you don't even have to know how to write code. It's out there for rent. It's literally ransomware as a service rental, to launch at people. And so with all the economics, this isn't going away. And so I don't know that we can turn it all around, Andrew, but this is where we can bring way more people in process and security than any small business or even tech provider can bring on their own. And so that's part of why we exist, is try to maybe make the tables more even. I can't say that it's a slam dunk win, but
I don't want to get into a long moral discussion, but the idea that people develop a skill set and then their intent is to do that with it, as opposed to the potential,
right.
I'm missing something there, right?
That's right. Yeah. You could be inventing the cure to cancer or self-driving cars or whatever, renewable energy or whatever it is. And you got some, unfortunately quite smart people, figuring out how to take down, systems and companies and all sorts of other things. And, I don't know if you've seen a couple of them, but a couple of the ones were accidental. There was a healthcare system in the UK, but the systems just spread, and in fact, automatically, and it actually took down an entire hospital system. And, the ransomware group decided to change their code a little later because it brought too much heat. Like a normal small business is one thing, but like it crippled a major national hospital system. Similar with in the US, the Colonial Pipeline. I don't know if if anybody remembers that was a ransomware attack that took them down. And the point is, anybody can click any link and they spread in all kinds of ways, just an email or other things. And so they're just, they don't care who gets it, and they spread it. And even if you don't know you have it, then you're spreading it. And so they're not even really in control of who gets it. And the pipeline one, there was a ransomware group that claimed responsibility and basically kind of said, we're going to try to change it to not do that, which is weird, but they had brought too much heat, right? And now all of a sudden the whole nation has stopped and looking, and they were worried that, the entire might of, the UK or the US or something else would be put to finding that. And they don't want that. They just want, the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses a year that, might make it into a local news story. They want that level. They don't, they're not trying to get Fort Knox
No, it makes a lot of sense. Small to medium-sized businesses don't necessarily have a huge, robust IT or IT security team. It may not even have anyone on staff. It may all be third-party providers. So I hadn't thought about it that way. It's a little frightening. That the small fish, there's a lot of them, and it adds up quickly.
It does. It does.
We broached earlier on the subject of content in terms of educating your potential clients and providing value. What role has content played in the growth of Servosity?
Not as much as it should. I'm ashamed to say, I've always believed in providing value first, and marketing is in providing some of that content's not been my strength. So for a lot of the time, the way we provided value first was more one-to-one. If you're starting to do this, and then you're newer at this, you're talking to Andrew and he asks you a question or two you don't know, you're a good person, so you don't want to make something up, you don't want to over or undersell it, and so call. We'll get on the call with you and Andrew. We'll do this. So a lot of it was more one-to-one interaction. Not only shoot me an email, but let's get on a call. Let's see if it's the right fit. Let me make sure we kind of understand the environment. Let's not, because even though they're technical people, it's something that needs to be done correctly. It's got to be kind of right size, right fit. And so we did it in a less scalable way, which was more one-to-one, or them and their client type interactions. And then we had built all this process over, like I said, I've been doing this in IT north of 20 years. And so I decided a year or two ago to give it away, which was at first counterintuitive, but I was inspired by others, because this is, look at it and go, well, really, you could probably build all this other stuff. This is the thing that would be it would be very hard and time consuming to figure out. I feel like it should be, the alternative title could have been 120 ways to lose your backups, or something like that. But it's all about the process of how to not. And if you check this, but you need to look for this and also do this. So we built this, I call it Steal My Process. And it's the most popular piece of content we have, because whether it's a prospect, whether it's somebody that just hears about us, whether it's just every once in a while participate in like a discussion forum or even a Reddit or something where they're talking about this and like, how do I prevent this from happening? And the thing is, it's like Groundhog Day. Over and over, they're like, I thought I had this vendor, I thought I was safe, and this vendor, technology keeps improving. So the vendor's like, okay, I'll give you an example. It takes your server, backs it up. Now, pretty commonplace. Most of the vendors will automatically boot up a copy of your server and then give you a screenshot of like the login screen. And so, kind of a proof of life for the server, like, okay, that's good. That's better than what I had years ago. But the problem is, it's led a whole new generation of people thinking that's enough. And it's not, because it doesn't really tell you if your data is corrupted. It doesn't really tell you about the data on the other drive. It doesn't really tell you a lot of things. And so, very frequently on whatever forum you want, there's these posts of these, these MSPs saying, I thought I had it, or I could rely on the screenshot, or. And unfortunately, what's even more heartbreaking is sometimes they've designed their own process to test. And like, well, we test this, and we, like in Windows, we open up, Windows, and we can see that there's a C. And if we click on C or D and it shows us a list of folders, then that was successful, because they're trying to do it frequently. So it's not too time consuming. And there was a post recently where somebody said that. That's not enough, because it doesn't tell you if the folder within that and the folder within that. So it's a very hard problem. And what's most heartbreaking is sometimes I see ones that have gone further than most and put in a more elaborate process, and they're still posting going, I'm doing all this, and it's still like, I still couldn't recover. So that's the part we share, because it's just this list of all the things you really have to become aware of. And most, it started with me getting the hard-won lesson. And then the part I left out, Andrew, is when we got into business originally, we were frankly like every other competitor. And what I mean by that is, we didn't originally do the managing it for you or the testing. And so we had pretty similar feature sets and all the other capabilities. And we said, our value prop is here or there, but it was just much more similar. And so for the first decade of our existence, what was heartbreaking is we'd still have like every other vendor that they don't talk about this openly like I do, they'd still have a company that couldn't recover. And even though they wouldn't blame us, they would still be upset. Like their customer is potentially like, here's what's facing an MSP when they can't recover. The best case scenario is your team is demoralized, your customer has fired you, and may or may not spread the word. The worst case is they're definitely spreading the word. And remember, you only do business in that one city or geo area, and so metro area. So now all the people know, and their insurance carrier has decided to sue you for damages. And so you're literally facing the entire loss of your business. So of course that keeps these guys up at night, because they're, the average one is hardworking, built this business up. They've been running for 15 or 20 years, 25 years, and they're going to have somebody else run it. They're going to promote this person. They're going to step out at some point. And here they are, 5 years away from that, and this happens. And the heartbreak is, if that were to happen, like the end client could be out of business, and the entire MSP and all of their employees could also be completely out of a job. So it's a really tough problem. We don't claim to have everything figured out. We've just collected all these heartbreaks. And every time there was the inability to recover, we were like, how did that come to happen? And there's some really repetitive ones, and there's some very shocking ones that we learned over those years.
I repeat, if you're paying attention, failure is highly educational and moves things forward, but you gotta be paying attention, and and you got to manage expectations too. I mean, there is no flawless approach, because for everybody who figures out every phishing scheme that's happened till now, somebody goes, "Ooh, I figured another way to get in there." And again, it's terrible that brilliant people have that sort of intent, but that's the world we live in. Humans are predators, aren't they? So
yeah, they're great humans, and they're not so great. And even until just a few years ago, your antivirus or other similar things, the way it worked is, if they ever saw something, speaking of failure, if somebody ever got it, then they created like basically a signature to identify it, and they pushed it out. That's why they would always download new virus definitions, and that way other people were protected. Because of the modern days, they're using AI to create ransomware that mutates. And so the signature, or the strain, if you want to think about like a virus, it's a different strain of the virus. It doesn't match. And so it, like you said, it's a cat and mouse game. Now they're using similar technology to try to find it, but anybody that says you'll never be breached or your backups will always recover, or any of those things, is not seen enough of the different ways creative bad actors come to find. So this isn't, I guess at the end, it's not about fear, uncertainty, and doubt or anything like that. It's just understanding that it's a complex world we live in, understanding the truth, and just saying, do you need this level of protection? If you're operating a business of any size, more than maybe 3, 4, 5 employees, the answer is probably yes. Really, this level that we're delivering was not available except for like Fortune 500 level until more recently. And that's a little bit of what we're doing. It's not quite that simple, but it's kind of like distilling the Fortune 500 services and processes and running that for you, so you don't have to.
Hey, it's part of the cost of running a business in 2023. It just is. I mean, to deny it, again, the only way you deny it is if you've just never been touched by any sort of breach or any loss or failure. Because if you have, it's just, it is a sinking feeling that you don't recover from very quickly. So,
yes.
All right, let's look down the road a year. What are some things you'd like to be celebrating personally and professionally?
Yeah, we're one of the things that I'm most proud about, and what I want to be celebrating a year is we have an amazing team. So this isn't the easiest job, and you've got to be wired a certain way, because if you think about it, our goal is to kind of like, I hope you never need, you need our software in terms of protecting, but I hope you never need to use it, because that's a bad day. So when you do, we want to shine, and we want that to be the best part of a bad day, for lack of a better way of putting it. But it takes a unique individual that's driven by really hard challenges, and the kind of individuals that can kind of be the unsung heroes on a day-to-day basis. So if you need just glorious amounts of praise every single day. This is not really the industry we're in. We're kind of to be the unsung hero you don't think about. But we're doing it at enough scale. It's every single day. Every single day somebody's getting ransomed. Not just in the US, I just mean like within our in customer base. So it's happening. But we know that we're really protecting people. So at the end of the day, it's about the team. The team and the culture are what build our business. And so we're at a really interesting growth and inflection point. So we're growing a lot, and I'd love to say that we've enabled more people to do that, and not just in general, but a part of our culture is we bet on what I call the diamond in the rough. So instead of saying, in order to work here and do things with technology, for example, you need a 4-year degree in computer science and this and that and 5 years of job experience. Well, even before the market became harder to fill or find the talent, I just didn't believe in that model. That's not my background. I didn't come from that. And so I thought both would be hypocritical, and I had seen myself and others that were often overlooked. So I won't, the way I say it when we hire is I won't hold it against you if you have a college degree. But we often hire these just amazing people that, when I say diamond in the rough, it's just that the regular resume filters don't make them come out as the clear candidate. But when you really talk to them and understand their passion and their drive and their hunger and things like that, you go, you know what, we just need to hire these smart people and let them tell us what to do because they're so smart. And so that's what really gets me fired up. And, I hope to be celebrating just tons more of that, because we're kind of hitting an inflection point where a lot of them have started to move from, they started as a individual contributor role, and we're hitting inflection points where they're starting to have moved all the way up into leadership and hiring their own teams. So it's a really fun spot to be in.
Excellent. Well, hey, I think the path is less linear than it's ever been in terms of 1 + 1 = college education, great job, life. It just doesn't seem to be that way anymore. And a lot more people are making the decision not to have $250,000 of debt on hand to have a piece of paper that hopefully gets you a job. So I appreciate that you're providing a pathway to people who have taken a different turn.
Yeah, I think a few years, even 3 or 5 years ago, we were odd. And now, because the talent market's tight, people call it innovative or something like that. It just depends on the timing. We've been doing the same thing either way.
Yeah, there's a fine line between those guys are nuts and they're innovators.
Yeah, we didn't change what we were doing with our recruiting process, but the world changed to kind of make it look more innovative than nuts. So yeah.
Perspective is everything, right?
Yes.
Please tell us, what's your URL? Where can people find Servosity, and what social media outlets you're using these days as well?
Sure. Servosity, SERVOS. That's the most common. It's with the S, ITY. So servosity.com. You can take a look, visit us, reach out if you'd like to have a conversation to see if it makes sense to talk. We're on all the social medias at Servosity, and I'm a host of MSP Mindset, where I get to interview some of the most interesting MSPs and tackle their thorny issues. And that's mspmindset.com and MSP Mindset wherever you social.
Excellent. Damien Stevens of Servosity, thank you for spending some time with us on Business Ninjas today. All the best to you and yours for continued success at Servosity.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Andrew.
My pleasure. Be well.
All right, bye.